Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3, 107.7 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey since the very beginning. So thank you, Folgers. It would not be the same without you. Also, big thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, for the contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for our intro that you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can't be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and the logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. He also specializes in the horror genre and does unbelievable commission pieces. So tonight, I am flying solo, as you can see. Bubbles is not with me, probably for this week. Her daughter had to have a biopsy on her kidney, so the family's just going through a little bit of a roller coaster ride right now. So let's just send them lots of well wishes, love, and big hugs. And hopefully everything goes status quo, which would be nice. Tonight, we welcome for the very first time Dr. Arlan Andrews Sr, who's going to be discussing his latest book. Let's try not to butcher this. KILLARUMIYOQ, The Lost Secrets of the Shadow Machine. And it's based on his trips to the Sacred Valley of Peru, which led to the discovery and analysis of an ancient solar calendar, to which, of course, he reveals in his book. So I'm really looking forward to all of that. That's something completely, different. We know we like to talk about ancient discoveries and things like that here on the show. So I'm, again, pretty excited. So we're just waiting for him to chime on in. And in the meantime, Tamara. Hello, Tamara. Sending hugs to Bubbles. Yeah, hopefully she'll be able to, sneak into the chat room. And hey, Chris. Hey, Chris. No Amelia tonight, unfortunately. But hopefully, she'll be back soon. And without further ado, our guest is here, so we can just hop right on board. And anybody having questions, please remember there are 8 different chat rooms tonight. So it's like a super highway that comes down to one lane. If we don't get to any questions or comments right away, just know that there are other ones coming in. And also remember that we'd like to keep up with the guest. So it's not going to be, all about what we want. This isn't a Q&A, guys. It's not a Q&A. Yes, Chris, love ancient history, love anything to do with it. It's just fascinating. And there's just so much that's been missed or that's been kept hidden or that simply hasn't been discovered. And we need somebody like Dr. Andrews to come in and say, well, I discovered something. So without further ado, Dr. Arlan Andrews, hello and welcome.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, pleasure. Pleasure is mine. Been looking forward to it. It's just fascinating. So I like to start off with, I guess, humble beginnings. I want to give you the floor because our show typically gets probably about between 2.5 and 3 million people a night, live listeners. A good chunk of that is audio because we're an FM channel as well. So I want to make sure we get absolutely as much as possible out that you would like to get out. So where would you like to start? How did you come across this discovery? Just on a random trip to Peru? Or is this something that you make a habit of doing, discovering amazing things?
Well, I was in Peru in April of 2012. I went there to look at a stone that I had written articles about, but I had not visited. A place called the Sept Stone, which should be the topic of another whole program.
Right.
But
You can do it.
I was on the way with my son, the doctor, medical doctor, and Sean Andrews. Our guide was Brian Forster, who's quite well known in the travel and ancient places. He's got the ancient, or what is it called, the Hidden Eco channel on YouTube.
Nice.
And the visits I'm going to talk about are on that channel.
Okay.
There's a program he had called "Did the Ancient Inca Have a Clock?" And that shows the first trip we took to that place of KILLARUMIYOQ on April the 10th of 2012. And
Okay.
you'll see me there about 20 pounds lighter. I mean,
Right.
heavier than. Okay, we were on our way to Sept Stone, and we went through this little village on the way about 30 miles north of Cusco, Peru. And we saw a sign, kind of a crude sign, showing an arch. And it says KILLARUMIYOQ. And,
Okay.
well, let's go back tomorrow and look at that. So we did. The next day we went back. And you put a picture up of the book that I wrote about it.
Yes.
I almost became obsessed with this site because, let's see, we're mostly on radio, but for your TV people, I can show a picture. Maybe I can show a picture of
Oh,
what the site looks like if you want to go on Google Earth, and you can look up the site of KILLARUMIYOQ, and
beautiful.
and you can see a drone shot of it below.
Okay. May I show that photo? One second.
Yes.
I went to you can find Dr. Andrews on Facebook, and he has some of these pictures, and this is where I borrowed them from. So here we go.
Okay.
There. Wonderful.
Okay.
Perfect. Nice big shot. Okay. And now what is this we're looking at exactly?
Okay. Right here, that's a waterfall. There was an ancient site built there.
Okay.
The calendar we're going to talk about was part of it. Excuse me, my allergies.
Oh, pardon. Sorry.
There are megalithic ruins there right now. There used to be some sort of building made with big, beautiful megalithic rocks that are all scattered around. There's a waterfall, and there are steps, wet steps, dangerous wet steps. You walk up, and you come to this beautiful carving in the side of the hill. There's a huge outcrop of limestone, about 60, 80 feet wide and about 40 or 50 feet high. And into it is carved something that looks like an inverted horseshoe or an inverted crescent moon.
Okay. Here we
It's
go.
a sculpture that's about 9 feet wide. There we go. 9 feet wide, 4 feet high, and 2 feet deep. And while Sean and Brian were looking at other things, I was fascinated by this. So I sat on a stone about 25 feet due east of that and looked at it for a couple of hours. Well, first off, I said, "This is elegant. This is beautiful."
It is.
Uh,
It is.
I said, "Now, it looks like the center of it is a parabola." And what fascinated me as an engineer and somebody interested in ancient civilizations is nothing parabolic has ever shown up on any other architecture in the New World.
Mm-hmm.
A parabola typically means solar related. It's related to the sun in some fashion.
Right.
So I said, "This looks like a sundial." And these little marks you see around the edges of it, for those who are listening on radio, there are dark marks. Let's see, 8 dark marks around the side of it that look like the markings on a watch, a wristwatch. You would have an analog wristwatch.
Yes.
So somebody went to a lot of trouble to carve this sculpture.
It's very precise.
And well, it's the innermost arc there of the parabola.
Mm-hmm.
It's very precise. It's very, very sharp, even to the touch right now.
Wow.
The locations of the markings on the side are precise. But if you look at it from a distance, like this photograph shows, it looks like it's nice and smooth, and somebody said melted by a laser. No, it's not. If you get up close to it and crawl around in it like I did,
Mm-hmm.
you will see it was chipped by hand and maybe some
Wow.
sort of chisels, thousands and thousands of chisel marks. And if you look at it in detail and take measurements of everything, you'll see that it's only as precise as it has to be. Now,
Right.
I'm an engineer, and I looked at this. I watched the shadows move, and I said, this is a sundial of some sort. So I'm going to go back to Cusco tonight and get online and find out all the books that have been written about it because, this is great. I want to know.
Right.
So I got back to Cusco that night. I spent hours on the computer, and there was almost nothing about it. There were only there was one government document that said it's there. This is the name of it, KILLARUMIYOQ.
Mm-hmm.
Kia meaning moon, and ruby meaning stone, and yak meaning belonging to. So the stone of the moon.
Wow.
And that's it. And I was shocked. So I hired Brian to go back out and take a lot of measurements over the next 5 years, really.
Wow. That's a lot of information to gather.
I decided, this is ridiculous. Somebody really needs to analyze this thing. So I'll tell you now, I'll preface everything with saying I made a discovery that nobody else has made.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why.
Right.
But I also analyzed it in a way that nobody else has ever used.
Right.
And I'll show you that. Let's see. I hate to not tell the people, able to show the people on radio, but you'll see a photograph here.
Yes.
The sculpture,
Oh, wow. Yes.
it's embedded in the big stone. And then the rock I was sitting on, I call the shaman stone. And I think that the carving was made there because that stone was a
Right here.
vantage point that you could look at it.
Yes.
So the sculpture is only meant to be looked at from a distance, like the photographs you showed.
Right.
So to me, as an engineer, I looked at it and said, okay.
I'm going to share this up to give people a scope of the size of it, if you don't mind.
Sure.
There. Also from Dr. Andrews' Facebook page. So
There you
this is to scale pretty much. Like it's not this
Right,
big, gigantic
No, it's not.
Stargate looking thing. Just to reiterate to those who are listening and not watching.
It's about 8 feet off the ground, so it can't be touched. It can't be touched unless you climb up to it. And I did, and it's dangerous. And
Right.
I wasn't supposed to be there either.
Uh-oh.
As an engineer, I was surprised and somewhat aggravated that it had not been analyzed because I wanted to read all about it.
Right.
So I said, I'm going to have to do it myself.
Right.
So it might be a discovery that I've made, which kind of thrilled me. I said, wow, it'd be great to make a discovery.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I took the initial measurements that Brian had made, and I made a fairly crude 3D CAD model, computer-aided design model on a program.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
using that, I made predictions about what the shadows should look like at different times of the year. And it looked to me like the shadows would indicate the solstices and the equinoxes of the year.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
And so these were crude.
Right.
So Brian went back out there based on my prediction. He went back out there on the solstice of June the 20th or 21st of 2012 and photographed it and got the shadows exactly like my model showed. So I said,
Wow.
this is pretty good. I have a crude approximate model, yet it predicted where the shadows are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why would anybody want to know the equinoxes and the solstices?
Mm-hmm.
An agricultural-based society needs to know when to plant and when to harvest. They need to know when the year begins and when the year ends, and probably
Correct.
all the months in between.
Yes.
So an agricultural society, this is a matter of life or death. If you don't get the crops in, you starve to death. I mean,
That's right. Yeah.
wait.
Very unforgiving.
So along the way, then, as new information came in, I made better models like this.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
What I'm showing you for the people on the radio is a better model of the system Now, it was only approximate because he couldn't get every angle and every dimension properly done. And there's a curvature to it that I wasn't able to put in.
Right.
But crudely, it showed what I wanted.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so this was a solstice model or photograph that he took. And the shadow there, the vertical shadow in the center,
Right.
underneath it, that one marking shows the shadow at the solstice.
Right.
And the shadow coming down overhead, when it touches the outer ring, tells the onlooker, the watcher,
Yes.
okay, this is the day.
Right.
Now, another thing we noticed, I took a lot of pictures that first day, and I noticed in this photograph, there was a time of day when there was let's see, right here.
Okay.
For the radio people, I'm showing that there's a hole in the rock, and the sun shines through at a certain time of day onto a certain spot.
Right.
Now, I put that in my computer model, and the computer model showed the same thing.
Oh, fascinating.
Now,
That's pretty good predicting that. Look at that.
The point is, you couldn't see it from that stone. The watcher on that stone could not see that sun shining through of the day I was there.
Right.
You had to be underneath it to see. So I wondered when it was that it would show up. Well, it turned out that on the day of the solstice, in addition to the shadows coming vertical and overhead, at the same time, the sun shone through that same hole. So all these things happened at the same time. Excuse me.
Of course.
So all these indicators, there are several other indicators, too detailed to get into here, but it has to do with shadows.
Right.
There are 5 different indicators that occur within a few minutes of each other on the day of the solstice.
Right.
Now, the watcher, the person who watched Inca stuff, if this is Inca, the watcher is called a Yanka. And the Yankas were assigned to many villages and other places to look up at other shadow phenomena.
Right.
And they would say, okay, this is the time, this is the day, it's end of the year, beginning of the year, time to plant, time to harvest, whatever. And maybe there were some ritual dates too. I mean, you use calendars for more than one thing.
Right.
And so somebody in the ancient times had figured out how to do this. So as an engineer, I was just totally fascinated by it. So it took hundreds of pictures and hundreds of measurements. An interesting thing we found out, and for the radio people, I'm showing a vertical, the first picture ever taken from the top of this monument looking down, sculpture looking down.
Wow.
If you extend lines from each of those markings,
Yes.
they all converge at one spot.
They do. Yes.
Now,
Yes.
what does that mean? Well, my 3D model showed that
Yes.
if you look at it overhead, they come together, but if you look at it in 3 dimensions, they all converge on one
Right
center
here.
point.
Yes. Yes.
And
So it's like it's similar to a sundial, just on a much bigger scale. And
it's a sundial, but it is unique,
yes.
as far as I can tell, in all of history because it has no pointer. There's no gnomon, no pole sticking in the middle that casts a shadow. The shadows are cast by the carved parabolic inner circle there.
It's curvature.
And
right.
so I went back in 2017 with my brother, this time, my late brother. And I went up there on it, and I confirmed that those things do converge like that.
Fascinating.
Now, funny thing was, I was up there about 20 minutes, and then I'm just about through. I had about 3 or 4 more measurements to make, and I start hearing a guy yell at me in Spanish, get the hell down off of that.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be there, you rebel.
Well, my brother offered him, my brother offered him $100 souls, $1.50 to let me stay, but no, get down. I just wish I had increased the offer for another 10 minutes, but nevertheless, I was able to get a lot of dimensions. For those who are interested, I have the curvature or the orientation
Wow.
of every one of those angles.
Very
Now,
well done. It's
thank
very
you.
difficult to say that it's crude. It's actually very
Well,
detailed.
I for those of you who are listening and didn't see the book, I wrote a book, which is available, of course, on Amazon and the other channels,
Right, I'll
called
put it back up again.
KILLARUMIYOQ, Lost
Yes.
Secrets of the Shadow Machine.
Okay,
Now,
let me put it up again.
I call it a machine, a shadow machine, because a machine is something that gives an output based on information you put into it, and
Right.
it's basically mechanical. It's straightforward, and this does that. If you
Right.
put if you go in your computer program, you put in a certain date and time, it will show you where the shadows are going to be.
Hmm.
Now, my results are approximate. What I really would like to have done, if somebody would do it, the government or some agency would go in and do a laser scan of that entire face
Mm-hmm.
and get a perfect 3D model of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then we could see exactly what's going on. There might be a lot more functions of this thing than what I came across.
Right.
But I was pretty happy that the crude models or the approximate models I had were able to predict what was going to happen, and the photographs at those times showed that it did happen.
Right. Right.
Now, this is a discovery. But like I said, as far as I know, nobody has ever used modern computer-aided design software
Mm-hmm.
to analyze the shadows of an ancient artifact.
Well,
So
no.
this
You nailed it. I don't think anybody would even have figured it out remotely.
and now in the book, the reason I mentioned the book, I want to get this in front of real archaeologists and other engineers and people. I would like people to go out and take these measurements and take pictures of shadows every day. It would be great to have a cam out there, a webcam, a trail cam to
Right.
video the whole thing. But
Yes.
that's not going to happen. But the 3D scan of the entire face would give us a perfect representation of it.
So
Then,
LiDAR, basically, like he said.
then we could
Right.
analyze everything. Now, because I'm an engineer, I like to share information. Every measurement that we took
Mm-hmm.
is in my book. I invite anybody who wants to please take the information we have, realize that it's only approximate, build your own 3D models of it,
Mm-hmm.
see if you can discover other things.
Right.
Now, the shadows are there. I went back in 2017 with like I said, my late brother Roy, and we were there for off and on for 4 days. During the June solstice, there's a thing called the solar standstill. The sun at solar noon those days is about in the same spot for just about 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, down in Peru today, they still have the celebration. They call it Inti Raymi, the celebration of the sun.
Right.
It's a 4 day party,
Nice.
and believe me, it goes on 24 hours a day, and it's loud and noisy and drunken and fun. And we participated in some of that.
Right.
It was great.
Right.
What I want to know, put forward is I want the people of Peru to realize that their ancestors, Inca or maybe before,
Mm-hmm.
built this thing. It's a work of genius.
Yes.
It's not anything like it in the whole world, in all of history that I can find.
I was going to ask you if there were any similar structures anywhere else in the world, if you were able to find anything.
There might be, but nothing that I could find online
Right.
or in any professional publication or anything.
Right. Right.
Somebody asked me that again today on another subject, and I said, yeah, I really hope that they can find it. Now, I did find that the Inca, whoever it was, in about the year 1500s, before the Spaniards came in and destroyed everything, the Inca put out a proclamation to calendars were to be built all over the Tenatsu, the kingdom.
Right.
Now, I thought, well, good. When I read that, maybe there are other ones like this, but nothing I could find anywhere in Peru or anywhere else was ever built like this. Now, if you took the same cylinder or calendar rather and moved it 50 miles, it wouldn't work the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's only good for I don't know how far, probably only a mile or so in each direction.
Yes.
Now, I don't know how many people on the radio are going to understand all this, but basically you have a thing, like I said, about 8, 9 feet wide, 4 feet high, 2 feet deep, a parabolic curve in the middle of it, and that curve defines a shadow that defines a vertical shadow, depending on where the sun is.
Right.
Then there are overhead stones that are also carved that produce a horizontal shadow that comes down and touches the outer ring of another parabola in the middle.
Right.
And when that does, that tells the Yanka, the onlooker, the watcher, okay, this is the time. And when that happens, the other things can occur too. There's a crack in the bottom of the floor there. There's not a hole to put a rod in for a shadow, but there is a crack that like it has been a natural crack that came across that was enlarged smoothly. Looks to me like they could have put a shadow bowl, a bowl of water in there, and at a certain time of year get a reflection off of that water onto the side. Now,
that would make sense. Yeah.
I was so involved in so many other things, I didn't have time to go ahead and look at that possibility. Now, what I did do, the shadows are there. That can't be argued with. Those are facts. Now, I did speculate about other things. And in the book, I identified it. In the book, I identified what the facts are about the shadows, about the 5 or so shadow functions that occur on the solstice, all within a few minutes of each other. And then I speculate on some other shadows and some other functions. Right. All that's defined in there. The facts are in one spot, and I defy anybody to argue with them, because you go down there and the shadow is going to be there whether you agree about it or not.
Right.
And,
right.
Now, another thing that occurred when I was looking at all the photographs that Brian had taken, I started looking at them quite quickly, and I noticed something. It looked like a figure was moving down the face of this huge rock. Now, if you look at this right here, kind of squint your eyes. What does that shadow remind you of?
Okay.
I'm showing it for people on radio. I'm showing this big shadow that comes down over the top of the sculpture.
Okay.
And here we go. And this is what it looks like to me.
Right.
It looked like the shadow of the condor, which is a holy bird, the sacred bird of the Andean cultures.
Right.
And you can identify the eye, the crest, the tail, the upswept wings.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
As far as I know, nobody else has ever pointed this out. Now, I'm looking at some other photographs that people have taken for me during the year, and the shadow might appear more than just the solstice. It might appear during other times of the year. I don't know. We really need.
Yes.
The complexity of that curved surrounding rock is such that I was not able to model it. I mean, you really have to do a laser scan to model it.
Right.
But it looks. Now, the condor, like I said, all Andean cultures revere the condor.
Condor.
The shadow.
North American would be thunderbird. Yeah.
Yeah. The condor shadow appears at Ollantaytambo and some other places in the Sacred Valley.
Okay.
Now, another thing I picked out, and this has to be looked at in detail. I'm speculating here.
Oh.
And that was December, 6 months later, during that solstice, it appears that the shadow of a cougar, a puma, is there in the opposite direction.
Yes.
Now, I have read from other speculative authors that the way Machu Picchu is laid out, that the shadows of it represent a condor one part of the year and a puma the other part of the year 6 months later.
Right.
And that such a pairing of shadows like that in opposite directions is common throughout the Sacred Valley. Now, I'll leave it up.
It's fascinating that to me is very precise detail, to have a carving as such where when a shadow hits it, you can pretty much see what it is. That's genius.
Oh, they were. Now, as an engineer, of course, I was trying to figure out how did they make this thing. And of course, me, I'm thinking, well, drafting board and drawings and
Yeah.
equations and everything else. And my wife looked at it. She said, "No, hon." She said, "If I was doing it, I would make a full scale clay model of the thing, fire it on a terracotta model, maybe,
Right.
and put it up next to where I wanted it to be made. And I would tweak that clay model until the shadows did what I wanted them to do. And only then the guys take the measurements and go over it and chip it to the rock." I said, "Of course, hon. She's a better engineer than I was, you know." It's a lot easier to correct mistake in a
Yeah.
mud model than it is for stone.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, when I first put the photographs of this out, and then Brian did it also back in 2012, we had all these New Age people. Forgive me, I like New Age people. I'm good myself, but I don't like the instant salvation, instant gratification that a lot of people get by saying, "Oh, it's aliens or it's ancient."
Right.
This. If you
Logical New Age, maybe.
if you say it was magic or psychic powers or aliens,
Mm-hmm.
you have to stop right there. Your brain stops. There's nothing you can do with it. Okay, that's
Right.
it.
Right.
But if you're an engineer, a double engineer like me, I said, well, I want to know how this worked. People worked on this thing. In my estimation, it took 4 people probably a year to 18 months to make this.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not going to spend this time and money and food and everything else for something that it's like that. I mean, you need to respect the ancients. They might not have been accurate about everything, but they were darn sure good about some things.
Right.
So
Right.
in this case, in the book, I show detailed workings up close. I reproduce a 2-square-inch thing, and you can see hundreds and hundreds of marks. They had some kind of chisels. In a few places, it looked like they had great big chisels, and I don't know what those tools were.
Mm-hmm.
But in many cases, it was just stones. They picked
Mm-hmm.
out stones, and I hate the thought of working on a big limestone rock like that to make like you say, a precise model. I mean, the first guys to look at that say, "Oh my God, really? Hey, boss, you really want us to do this?"
Well, you have to dissect it to understand it. Just while we're on that topic, what type of stone is it?
Limestone.
It is limestone, and also wondering, is there an aquifer underneath the structure?
There,
that you know of.
that government pamphlet that I mentioned said that there was they had done some excavations and they had found an aquifer underneath.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, not an aquifer, but called French drain, I guess you would say.
Right.
Yeah, this is the document I'm showing for the radio listeners. I'm showing the one document that the Peruvian government put out about the archaeological site. It mostly talks about the site and not the sculpture itself. The site is 100 acres and it's got a cave.
So it's protected, basically.
Yeah, it is.
Protected area. Right.
But people ask, well, what happened to all the stone that was chipped out? And I said, like I said, it could have gone down to the bottom and they made a French drain out of it.
Right.
Because 20 feet behind you, behind the shaman stone, is that stream. And then the waterfall goes down, and the waterfall goes next to where the building had been.
Mm-hmm.
So my take is that more than likely they had one person, because that stone is only good for 1 or 2 people to sit on.
Right.
And different times of the year, he, and there always was a he, would be out there looking for something, and he's okay, it's close. Okay, today's the day, and he would go down and tell the people and the priests or the workers in that building, okay, that we can tell the folks this year has begun, the year is ended, or it's time to plant, or it's time for this celebration or whatever. Mm-hmm. But those markings on there are permanent markings. The way the thing is laid out, there's always a triangular shadow any time of day between the two, between the different, what I call wedges on the side here. Mm-hmm. And, it still works. You can still go there and it still works. And I did take videos when we were there in 2017, and it was exciting at that time because I wasn't sure. I mean, the still photographs show one thing, but to see it in actual motion was very, very
That's
pleasing.
a whole other thing. Yes.
And as far as I know, we were the first people ever to point that out and photograph it.
So is there any real idea as to who built it? Who constructed this?
In my book,
timeline on it.
In my book, I put down every quote that I could find in the archaeological literature about the site.
Right.
And it only takes about 3 pages. And typically they say it's there, it's the moon, it's probably a feminine idol of some sort. Feminine ceremonies take place here. That's it.
Right.
One Cuban archaeologist was there, and he said it might be astronomical, but he didn't do anything with it. And then somebody else said, well, there's no mention of it by the Spaniards. In fact, there was no mention of it anywhere until the modern times. I mean, when conquistadors ravaged the country, they usually made notes about what they tore up, you know.
Yes.
But
yes.
There were no notes about this at all. So it's, I don't know.
That's interesting.
Now, it's been out there at least since the Inca, which would be at least 500 years.
Right.
The Inca were only there for 100, 150 years.
Right.
And other cultures were there thousands of years before. So
right.
If you look at it, it doesn't seem to have been weathered that much. Like I said, that inner parabolic arc is still sharp to the touch. The surfaces were never really smooth. They appear smooth from a distance, but up close they're not. But they don't appear to be that weathered. Now, you go to Cusco and you look at some stones around Sacsayhuaman and some of those places, Ollantaytambo, Valley, those stones have been weathered. You can tell they're smooth edged.
They've been around a while. Right.
Now, this one, like I said, can't be touched unless you climb to it. So nobody ever rubbed on it or anything.
Yes.
So I saw some person without any evidence at all just a couple of days ago, looking on the Facebook about it, or YouTube or someplace. She said, it's 3,000 years old. I'd like to know how you got that.
It would be weathered. Right, for sure.
I tried to, using that sun shining on that spot at a certain time, I tried to run the calendar. The program I had takes a calendar back 4,000 years. And I was trying, but I don't have the exact measurements of the hole, exact position of the hole. But I imagine you could look at that and see during the solstice where the hole shines through, the sun shines through at a certain spot. Right. To get that, it has to be exact orientation. Now, I did go back about 2,000 years, and with my crude model, it looked like it was still working 2,000 years ago.
Okay.
But I can't. I have no confidence in that. That's just that'd be an artifact of the program or my inaccurate measurements. That's why we need somebody to go there.
Yes.
Really measure the whole thing and see. Right. If they did that, they'd probably tell.
Well, it's interesting because if it looks like it could have been functioning, but yet it's not weathered, like it just opens up a whole other series of questions. Did you ever observe it in the moonlight?
Everybody asks it. No. First off, the place is closed. And secondly, it would be dangerous to be around there in the moonlight because you could fall off.
Right. But it would be interesting setting up cameras, like you say, maybe trap cameras to observe it doing different things at different times of the year, different times of the day or night. Well,
if it has anything to do with the moon, I'd be surprised because
right.
And I'll leave that, like I said in the book, I'll leave that as an exercise for the reader, for the student. Because the moon is a different place, and my God, to go back hundreds of years, the moon is all over the place. But the sun is exactly the same spot. I went back 3,000 years on there, and the sun was in the perfect spot for 3,000 years. The Earth hasn't moved very much in 3,000 years.
No, surprisingly.
It hasn't tilted much. There, someday, 10 or 15,000 years, it will tilt.
Right.
And people have asked about the orientation of the feet of this thing, but at the bottom of it, for the radio listeners, the bottom of this arch, there are vertical feet. And again, during the solstice, one of those feet goes into shadow and the other goes into sunlight immediately. There's all these other shadows happening. So, like I said, all these things can't be coincidence with all these things going on.
No, I don't believe in coincidence. No.
The entire sculpture is oriented at 12 or 13 degrees east of north. Now, as an engineer, I would think, north and south is exactly what I want, but this is tilted 13 degrees. And that's another thing I'll leave up to the reader or the student to calculate. I don't know if it's because it's 13 degrees south of the equator that's tilted 13 degrees, or if there's another reason. Or maybe it just had to do with the rock that they had available. So I imagine when somebody wanted to do this, they saw this great big rock out there, the big flat face.
Right.
And so we could carve something in there. And we got this big shaman stone sitting over here 25 feet away. We could sit on that and look directly and make our calendar there. And one thing we forgot to mention to everybody on radio is this thing is tilted back about 45 degrees. It's not vertical or horizontal. It's tilted back into the rock about 45 degrees.
Okay, that's good to know.
And so again, the uniqueness of it is it's got that parabola in the middle that defines the shadow, tells you what time it is. It's got the overhead rocks that have been carved to give you an overhead indicator to say, okay, do your reading now. And it's tilted at 45 degrees with no rod to give a shadow. So all these things make it unique. And to me now, the building of it is not that big a deal. I'll have to give my wife credit for coming up with that. But to me, the concept of it, the person or persons who thought of this, who in the world would ever think of such a thing? I mean,
right. So
I enjoy
definitely human, yes. In your perspective, do you think these are made by human hands?
Yeah. No,
okay.
Yeah.
I have to ask because you know how the hubbub about the pyramids.
That was part of my the crap I had to put up with when I first showed the pictures of it back in 2012.
Yeah.
Oh, it's melted into stone. No, it's not. Oh, it was made by aliens. What proof of that? Again, if you say aliens, you got to quit. There's no way to analyze it. Just drop it.
Yeah.
I mean, in my estimation, I know people are going to argue with me. My estimation, there's no evidence whatsoever, zero zilch, that any alien ever built anything on Earth. It was all done by ancient people, smart people, engineers, artisans, architects, sculptors, people working with hands. And to say that it was done by magic or aliens is an insult. And actually, I don't want to get into it too deeply.
Oh, it's okay. Our audience is completely wide open to everything.
Actually,
it all goes.
Actually, to me, it's culturalist and racist.
Okay, interesting.
To do that. Okay. People say these little brown people in the Andes couldn't have come up with this thing. The Suwaidi stone, 30 miles from this one, is another piece of genius.
Yes.
That has a real lost technology built into it that I'll talk about another time.
Right.
I mean, lost technology you can identify. It's there. It's been there hundreds or thousands of years.
Right.
So, and my friend Chris Dunn, of course, can tell you all about the stuff that we saw in Egypt, and he's still reporting about
Egypt. Yeah,
and writing about Egypt.
Yes.
And when people say, and there's a very famous person interested in these things, he writes a lot about it. And I respect all the work he's done up until one paragraph in one book. He said, I don't believe any of these things were done by mechanical means. They were done by mind power or psychic means. Oh, God.
Right.
Give me one piece of evidence. I mean, if you build up to it and say, I've got evidence that shows that, I'll listen, If I've got time, I'll listen to it.
Right.
But
show me your work.
without evidence. And that's it. In my work here, every measurement we took, every dimension we took, every angle we took, everything is in this book. And I invite other people, like I said, to build their own models. Go try it out, because they might find things I overlooked. In fact, there will be. There's a lot more to it than what I was able to find.
No, about mathematics, right? I mean, at the end of the day.
It's, in the book I show how different parabolas describe the the inner workings of the layout and everything. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There's no evidence, that the Inca or the other Indian tribes had cultures had advanced mathematics or geometry. I don't know.
Well, I mean, ancient cultures follow the stars. Ancient cultures, I think, and here's a perfect comment. Genius like this happens when the population is not dumbed down by media or tech addictions. Right. So I think you had
That's
a community that worked together. I mean, some of the best scholars came out of ancient times.
I was in Egypt one time with Chris Dunn and others, and a lady was giving us a tour of the West Bank. And I saw a young boy about 15 years old herding a bunch of sheep and goats across the street. And I said, how come this kid's not in school? It's school time. She said, no, the people in the West Bank raise our food. They don't go beyond eighth grade, eighth form. I said, you realize that this kid right there might be the smartest person who ever lived? You're not giving him an education. You're making him raise goats.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just the way it is. On the East Bank, we are, she was basically saying, on the East Bank, we're superior. We get master's degrees and everything. And on the West Bank, they'd raise our food.
Wow.
Oh my God. And this kind of racism, culturalism, and arrogance.
It's a tough world, Arlan. It's a tough world.
In Egypt as well as here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been. It's a very, very cut and dry mix, sadly.
Well, yeah, the guy named Rachmaninjan from India was a self-educated guy.
Right.
If you read about him, and he had mathematics that nobody else in the world did. So,
Yes.
Brains and minds are packaged in different ways, but they can be great no matter where they are.
I agree with you.
Now, what I want to see out of this, besides getting credit for being the discoverer, of course, I am that much of an egotist, of course. Who isn't?
It's okay. Pat yourself on the back.
Well, why not? I mean,
exactly. That's what I say.
I mean, my friend Chris Dunn looked at pyramids and sculptures in Egypt and saw things that nobody else had ever seen.
Right.
All the millions of people had been there, and nobody else ever saw what he saw. Now, he was my inspiration for this. Mine is not in the same league with that, of course, but it is different. What I would like to see is that this thing be made a World Heritage Site. So that little village, San Martin de Porres, next to it, which is dirt poor, but it becomes a tourist attraction. Now, it's funny. We were there in 2012, and the crude sign, and we went back the next day and drove out there on this rough road, had to stop and hike about a quarter mile up to this site and everything. And all they had was a sign, don't get up here, not prohibited. Yeah. But that was all. There was nothing. Mm-hmm. So 5 years later, in 2017, we go back. Wow, next to the highway is a great big sign, beautifully done.
Oh.
Archaeological site. So we drive up there, and now there's a rope across and a gate across the road, and there's a visitor center, and you go inside, and they have models of it and everything else. They don't pay much attention to the sculpture, but the entire archaeological site, and you have to pay money to go to it. I said, well, that's great. 5 years. I'm sure the road is going to be great. We got in there, the road was worse.
Oh.
They had not maintained the road at all, and we had to hike. This time I had 30 pounds of equipment with me, and my brother had a bunch of stuff, and we had to tote all this stuff up those wet stairs and around.
Right.
Not improved the site at all, but at least they had paid some attention to it. The funny thing was, we were getting ready to leave, and we took a road back behind it. And as we were walking by, I was complaining about the upkeep of the thing. And at that moment, the road gave way underneath me. And I started falling down the hillside about 50 feet. And if I had gone much further, there was about a 20-foot drop-off there. So I had to just start running myself to get myself back in balance and not fall off the edge. And I said, well, that's the last time I'll complain about anything where anybody can hear me.
Right.
I complained. And we wanted to go out there at daybreak, but it didn't open then. And also, it's dangerous to be around the site in the dark. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the State Department keeps giving out these warnings about Peru anywhere anymore about crime. They've had so many illegals come across from Venezuela and other places that there are daylight
Right.
robberies. I
Right.
can't speak to that. I'm not there, but I keep
Yeah.
getting these State Department warnings because I'm under their list
So
of.
proceed with caution, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, go out. Don't go alone. Don't go alone. In fact, don't go to Cusco alone.
Right.
Always have somebody with you. I had
Wow.
a friend who was mugged there years
Mhm.
ago, and it still happens. But
Oh, not going to get any easier. Um, I think to turn this into a World Heritage Site, and I agree with magazine over here, you're going to need to get, I mean, modern day stuff to preserve an ancient site. Get bloggers, maybe put in a live cam. People would like the live camera thing. That's a great
well, yeah,
idea to build an online audience. To maybe
live
raise money to get the LiDAR done.
a live cam would be done. Would be nice to have. I'm afraid the way things are right now, it would be stolen.
Ah,
But
good
but
point.
good.
Yes, yes,
That's what I thought about at the time. But it would be nice. It'd be nice totally to characterize the entire thing
yes, yeah.
and find out what else it does, what else these shadows do.
Hmm.
And the reason I try to speculate about how it was used is so that real archaeologists, people who've been educated in the culture of the ancient times, might
Hmm.
say, okay, that fills a gap we didn't know about.
Yes,
We always wondered
yeah.
about such and such. Maybe this was. Now, I did send a copy of the book, to a respected Indian archaeologist in Chicago, and he said he'd received it. He hadn't had time to review it. The last
Hmm.
time I communicated with him, he was in Peru, and asked him to please go by and take a look himself, because I would like to do a professional paper about it. I mean, I'm not an archaeologist, but
From someone in the field,
I do have a doctorate
basically.
in engineering, so that on in some kind of this credential business,
Right,
But
right.
I would like for real archaeologists to take a look at it, see where I'm right, see where I'm wrong,
Hmm.
and I would want them to go and argue with those shadows, though.
Yes.
They're going
Well,
to be.
I think having someone, from the academia world would to write a paper, I think would be beneficial. I think it would then have a little bit more credibility with the government because even if it's someone in Peru who does it
Well,
that they revere.
I was hoping.
Yeah.
I was in contact with one archaeologist in Peru, but he broke off contact. I think because of the videos that we had on YouTube. I don't know why he never did answer, but
Right.
I would, somebody in Peru, in Cusco there, could go out there to the site. It's only half an hour away. Go out
Yes.
and take a look, and take all the measurements you want, do everything.
Hmm.
And I was extremely disappointed to start with that somebody else didn't have the book. I'd have been real happy that day if I could have gone downtown to a bookstore in Cusco and bought a great big tabletop book and said, "Here's all the details."
Right.
That would have
Right.
been it. I wouldn't have spent untold hours of my life.
Oh, but
Looking at the-
it's like a double-edged sword, I think. If you bring a lot of attention to the area, then some of that attention always isn't always welcome. You get, tourism sometimes brings destruction, and it's not always on purpose. You do have your vandals, but then you have people, if you look at some of the ancient monuments and locations throughout the world, because I'm a world traveler, I've been to many, and sometimes they don't even allow you to take photographs. You can't touch anything because the sweat just damages. Like
yeah.
we damage things when we come in masses, unfortunately, of no fault of our own on some, most cases. So you're really taking like I said, it's like a double-edged sword. You're taking a chance with it, but in the same breath, you want it to be recognized for what it is because it's a very impressive site.
Well, in this case, they can't touch it unless they climb up there. Now, I have been told by other people that since the publicity, the site, the video that Brian Forster put up,
Yeah.
the Inca had a clock. I
Right.
checked today; it's been seen 132,000 times on YouTube.
Wow.
I wish
Wow.
1%. I wish 1% of those people would buy my book.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
but but I've been told that a lot of people climb up there and meditate and try to get Stargate portal. All this nonsense.
That's a big one. That's a big one. But maybe that's we almost got to lean towards to bring that attention, Like apparently, according to magazine, the site is a half hour away from the alleged alien attack up there. So I don't know.
Alien that alien attack. I didn't see. I'm not reading the report.
Yeah, she goes, the site is a half hour away from a location that had an alleged alien attack.
Oh, I thought that was over in the Amazon in Peru where they had the.
I don't know, but maybe you just have to be kind of including it in a few things to bring a different culture over to look at it, and then the people come, then they protect it because they're not going to want to see it get destroyed.
That alien attack I read about, the face stealers over in the Amazon jungle, that was weird. Now that's another. In my entire life, I've been interested in strange things. My grandmother, maternal grandmother, told me all the ghost stories of the family, and she claimed we were Cherokee, and she had all these stories about things, and she believed it all. And my mother did not want her to tell me, but she did anyhow. Right. But I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and that's the birthplace of General Douglas MacArthur,
right?
World War II guy, and his homestead is now MacArthur Park, not the one in the song, but MacArthur Park, and it had a natural history museum inside. And I used to visit it quite a bit. My dad ran a baseball team, and I was more interested in the museum, so in the same spot. So I went inside and looked at all the natural history stuff they had there. And they had, Arkansas has got a lot of mounds, a lot of Indian stuff, and they had all kinds of things in there. And I got extremely interested in that as a little kid, with my grandmother's stories about weird things happening. And then I saw all these weird monuments and carvings and pottery and things inside the museum. I got interested in it. In town, I lived across the street from the elementary school I attended, and we had a lot of trees. It was a little forest there for a playground. Mm-hmm. And we found arrowheads. We used to find arrowheads right across the street from the house.
Right.
So as a kid, I used to wonder, who made this, when, and nobody really had answers to that. Hundreds or thousands of years ago, there were people out here carving arrowheads or using arrowheads. So I always got fascinated.
Yes.
Back in the 50s, television was different. And it used to be on a Saturday morning, in addition to cartoons, they had a program called What in the World.
I remember that.
You remember that one?
Reruns, yes, I do. I remember.
I'm 30 years older. Anyhow, they would put an artifact out, and then a lot of smoke around it, clear it off, and they said, "What is this?" And the experts were trying to figure it out. Well, I used to watch that religiously.
Wow.
And I got to where I could just about pick it out if it was Olmec, or if it was Aztec, or if it was some other culture.
Right.
And that was just. Now, at one point in my life, I've always been interested in rockets, spaceships, UFOs, everything weird. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be an archaeologist. But one of my heroes growing up was a guy named Roy Chapman Andrews, no relation, who did discoveries in China in the Gobi Desert, right. Paleontologist. And so getting ready to choose a career, I looked at archaeology in high school. Okay, archaeologists, you have to get a doctorate in archaeology.
Yes.
To do anything, and you have to get grants, and you have to put up with academia. And I said, well, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. Astronomy was next. Okay, I didn't want to work nights alone. And so science or engineering. And when I got ready to take the first test to become a co-op student at White Sands Missile Range, I decided engineering because that was one of the things that was available. Mm-hmm. That's how my career wound up. So I wound up working around rockets and stuff. My first job was as a missile tracker at White Sands Missile Range at 18 years old. And to get to watch hundreds of missile flights, that was fun.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, while I was there, on a different topic from Peru, September the 26th, 1960. That time I had a week-old son by that time, my first child.
Aww.
Yeah, there was a sighting, UFO sighting in Las Cruces, New Mexico. A couple of cops saw a green light up on a mesa next to a golf course.
Hmm.
They went up to see it, and they saw something big green, dripping green flames, and taking off across the mountains.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
security guards at White Sands Missile Range over there at Holloman Air Force Base saw it, and they said it was probably a meteorite. Now, I might only have been a young engineer, but I didn't think meteorites took off from the ground.
No. No.
Well, fortunately, John Greenwald here of the Black Vault sent me a copy of the report. I mentioned it to him a few months ago, and he found it and sent it to me. And the CIA had looked into it and had said it was probably re-entry of the Soviet satellite. Again, I don't think so. They don't go for the ground.
No. But they do spin a good tale.
But during that time, I got to meet Dr. J. Allen Hynek. He was a UFO investigator. I didn't know he was a UFO investigator.
Wow.
I was friends with Dr. Clyde Tombaugh, the guy who discovered Pluto. He was a professor at our school, and he introduced Dr. Hynek as a balloon astronomer.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had known, because I would have told him about that site. But anyhow, and I met a bunch of UFO people over the years. I became a consultant for APRO, Area Phenomena Research Organization. In 1967, I brought Jim and Cora Lorenzen over to New Mexico State University to make a presentation about UFOs, and I became a consultant for them.
Right.
And later, I worked with Walt Andrews of MUFON and became a mechanical engineering consultant for them, hoping that someday, if the government found UFOs, they would invite some of us to come in and look at them. But
Right. Sure.
they didn't do it.
We're still fighting for that.
The most important discovery in human history, and they won't tell us about it. That bothers me a lot.
Right.
But back on more mundane things, like the ancient civilization that created this sculpture.
Right. And
I have ultimate respect for whoever did it. The concept of it, the execution of it. I would love to know how it fit into their society. And that's why I hope real archaeologists will look at it and tell us how it fit. I mean, I'll put it this way: I read I bought a whole bunch of books on Indian astronomy. I've got a couple dozen here I bought, and one of them here they talked about around Cusco when the Inca took over. Inca of their day were kind of like the Russians of our day. They just went in and took over what they wanted to and incorporated, just took it over.
Right.
And when they took over Cusco, they worshipped the sun.
Yeah.
The people in the sticks out there worship the moon mostly, but the Inca worshiped the sun. They put these great big columns around Cusco, and the Spanish chronicler talked about it. Said at the solstice you could be there, hundreds of people would turn out, and you could see where the shadows were. And the Spaniards, of course, tore them down and used the stones for other things. But so I consider finding a solstice in Cusco being like Big Ben clock in London. Everybody, thousands of people can see it.
Right.
There it is. But this KILLARUMIYOQ out here in the sticks, that's more like your grandfather clock in the hallway.
It is.
You don't have a lot of people to see it, but it's still important.
Yes.
That's the difference.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if you've been all over those ruins down there around Cusco, all over Peru.
But it's hidden in plain sight, pretty much.
Well, yeah.
Off the beaten track,
Well, it's on the way. It's in the Sacred Valley. It's just
right
about a mile and a half off of the main drag, and those roads were probably built where the Inca went.
Right.
I don't know why it was ignored all this time, but I do know that as soon as you call it, well, it was a ritual thing, your brains turn off.
So a ritual thing. That's interesting. How so?
Well, one guy claimed that, it's an exact replica of a feminine shrine in Egypt. Well, good. Show us.
Show us the work. Yeah.
that would be fantastic if you could find something in Egypt, the same age.
Yes. Yes.
So anyhow, I'm putting it out there. I'm hoping the book sells because
Hmm.
I want I want lots and lots of people to be interested in this thing because there might be an equal genius out there who reads this thing and says, I know what that's for. I know how to do it.
Right.
Great. You can write the book.
Or
Tell me.
hey, I've seen something similar. Magazine wants to know, did you name it the Shadow Machine? And goes on to say, shadows bring to mind duality, the dark half as above, so below type of stuff.
Well, Sol y Sombra, sun and shadows. It's a shadow machine. It produces shadows according to the programming. It's a three-dimensional solid program, if you wish.
Yeah.
It's software. It's software in the Stone Age, if you want to say.
Yes.
It's built. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks for itself.
And the limestone is local?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that stone there, that huge stone you saw, I think is, if the entire outcropping is probably 150 feet wide. Right. It's just an outcropping of limestone.
Right.
And like I said, I think they chose the site because of convenience.
Yes.
Convenience of the flat stone to carve in, the stone to sit on, the fact that there's a stream behind it, that meant they could live there. Somebody could live there. There's water, flowing water. And
Right.
And there might be more to it. Like I said, please look at it. I know there's another Inca site called Tipan, which is on the other side of Cusco, where they brought water, and it still works, underground pipes from a mile and a half away, and it still flows.
Mm-hmm.
That was beautiful hydraulic engineering.
Right.
And that Suede stone I keep talking about, that is to me a three-dimensional representation of a teaching machine, probably a documenting machine.
Mm-hmm.
It's a scale model of a lot of hydraulic works in Peru. And but like I said, that's another subject. I want to write a book about it, but I don't have enough measurements. We spent a couple of days there.
Yeah, it'll come. But she goes, yeah, shadows, light mirrors, water reflections, because you thought maybe they may have had a bowl with water. So it seems to be something that could potentially be working on different levels, not just, the shadow, but the lights.
Yeah,
mirrors.
It could be. One photograph there, you see there's a crack, and it points toward one of those markings. And like I said, if you put a long bowl of water in there, and the sun shines a certain time, it will give probably a ray of light at the side. But like I said, I just didn't have the time or inclination to go ahead and do that. There's so many nuances to this that you can spend your entire life on. I wanted to hurry up and get the information out to other people who work on it.
Let's face it. A lot of these ancient cultures had, they built monuments, and we in the modern times think, oh, it's this big spectacular thing that does this and that. But meanwhile, it's an elaborate sundial. And you see examples of it all over the planet. And here you've got this very elaborate device that is essentially that sort of a timekeeping machine, because you're right, to go back to the ancient times, it was all about the solstices. That's what they followed the stars, and they followed, the sun. And if you missed the boat, you didn't eat that year.
That's it. So successful societies were able to use that information. The unsuccessful ones died.
Mm-hmm.
Nature.
Tamara says it would be good to know what building was destroyed that was with that shadow machine. Do you have any idea?
No, there's a downhill from there. It's probably 30 by 40 feet square, but there are only a couple of courses of rectangular stone left there. I don't know what it was.
Right.
But it was of the same kind of megalithic construction as the real nice stuff. It was not Inca. The Inca, you can look at Machu Picchu, for example.
Right.
In Machu Picchu, there are beautifully carved and finished megalithic stones. And above those, you see stones that the Inca piled on with mortar.
Mm-hmm.
And so, more than likely, that
Mm-hmm.
that megalithic building was not Inca,
Right.
which kind of suggests that perhaps KILLARUMIYOQ itself was not Inca. Now, according to the archaeologists that I did read, they said that the name KILLARUMIYOQ doesn't appear anywhere. It's just what the locals called it because it looked like the moon to them, looked like a crescent moon. So they called it the moonstone, but nobody knows what it was originally called or what language it was in.
Right.
So like I said, I get a lot of people interested in it, letting other people look at it and work with it, and let's see what else we can find out. Let's make it a ongoing.
It's so fascinating. Yeah. Well, I would love it if they could actually find something similar elsewhere and you could just sort of connect the dots. It would probably answer so many other questions for you. For example, all the pyramids throughout the world tells us that there were advanced cultures that made their way somewhere to build these exact same monuments, just different styles. But at the end of the day, they're pretty much the same monuments.
Yeah,
all the henges, all the mounds, like the similarities.
I thought it was fascinating when I was there. I've been to both the Great Pyramid at Giza and the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan, rather. And,
yes.
And they both have the same base. They both have the base dimension is the same, both of those now.
Wow, really?
I wonder why is that? I mean, I doubt if they were built at the same time, but is that reflective of some ancient system of measurement or what?
Right.
I mean, it goes on and on. I was on Ancient Aliens once. They wanted me to come and talk about the use of mica on the Pyramid of the Sun.
Right.
And the way they put it to me, we want you to talk about mica. Was it used for spaceships landing on that pyramid, or was it used for protection against radiation on this pyramid? I said, look, I'm not even going to dignify that with any kind of answer.
Right.
Let's call the whole thing off. Oh, we can't call it off because we've already bought tickets for you. You got to fly out to Denver and be interviewed. I was down in Texas at the time, and
right. That's a tough one.
So I wouldn't do it. I was going to call it off, but they said, "Well, what kind of answers? What kind of questions will you answer?" So I gave them some.
Mm-hmm.
They still ask other questions, but I refuse to say those words.
Right.
Like Brian told me, if you refuse to say Ancient Aliens on there, you'll never be on again. And so he was probably right because I only had that 1 hour of interview. They've played it. They split it up into two different parts, two different times.
Right. It's hard. You don't have creative control, and you have to put your integrity.
The thing was,
yeah.
I don't get wrong here. I think there were ancient aliens. I think there are present day aliens. I just don't think they have a lot to do with us. As my old acquaintance Stanton Friedman one time said when they asked him, "Well, why don't the aliens come out and land on the White House lawn and talk to us?" He said, "I don't know. I don't try to talk to the squirrels in my backyard."
This is true. This is true. Well, I talk to squirrels in the backyard, but yeah.
The whole thing about the aliens is I want to know what they are, but like I've written several things in the UFO Encyclopedia and other books saying that when we finally do find out, if we ever do, the truth about UFOs and aliens, first off, it might not be worth knowing. Or secondly, we might not want to know it, and we might wish we didn't know it.
Right. It's one of those double-edged sword things, right? But I mean, you've been to some of these ancient monuments. Like I said, I've traveled the world myself to phenomenal ancient places. We know there was definitely cultures here long before us. We're not the first kick of the can at the planet. We're probably the fourth or fifth with respect to civilizations. They found a lot of out-of-place artifacts that leave us scratching our heads. We, pre-ice age, civilizations, we can look at some of the hieroglyphs and petroglyphs and some of the ancient structures. We know there's something to it for sure. But, can we or will we assume, well, we can make a lot of assumptions, but can we prove, I guess is a better way to put it, that they had a hand in any of this? I know the ancients would emulate what fascinated them or what they respected or what they feared. They would emulate some of the things that they saw. We know that because we see them in petroglyphs and hieroglyphs and et cetera, et cetera. So maybe that's why people are so anxious to go there. People want to think your discovery is a bloody Stargate because it's exciting and it's like, can you imagine? Like, people want to look at that. If you say, well, it's a sundial, can it beam us out somewhere? Like they want that mystery behind it. So
I'm a hard-headed engineer, and
right.
to me, the first off, it's pretty to look at, and secondly, it was majestic in its conception and the execution. And that's enough for me.
Yeah.
If you put all these other mystical things in there, you can't prove it, and so to me, it's a waste of time.
Right.
Too many New Agers that I've met over the years, and I've been meeting New Agers for 60 years now.
Right.
And Midwood, looking for some sort of instant salvation. In meditation, if you want to get perfect meditation, you're going to be a Tibetan monk, and you're going to spend 50 years alone in a damn cave and starve yourself to death.
Right.
You're going to get it by some guru from India who's going to give you a 15-minute mantra. Like I did that. I've done that too.
Right.
I've taken
maybe they've got to do 3D imaging to go through that rock and see what else in and around under,
Well,
maybe.
a 3D scan can do it. I mean, somebody can sit up in a day. You have to have permission, though. In fact, in Peru, you have to have permission to take professional cameras in, and the number of chips you bring in to take pictures with. So I've probably violated all kind of laws. I probably never go back again
Right. Yeah, naughty. Yeah.
I'm writing another novel right now about what went on before, and part of the novel is, and part of my belief is this: you look at Gunung Padang in Indonesia. My friend Lee Pennington went there a few years ago and did a lot of surveys and stuff, and talked to this guy Danny Hillerman, who found it, and who they dated parts of it back 24,000 years old. Wow. Now, let's think about it. What kind of science do we have? Our science didn't really begin until the 1600s.
Right.
And we had all kind of knowledge gathering before that, but there was no something that you could call science. Maybe stretch it, maybe the 1500s, but until you had Newton and Leibniz and these guys, you didn't really have science. You had a lot of interested rich guys who went around and wrote neat things about animals and stuff. But so we've had only 500 years of science. Mm-hmm. What if on Indonesia, before it sank under the ocean in the Ice Age, Younger Dryas, what if you had an island there, you had some kind of civilization that went on for 5,000 years and had 5,000 years of science and not 500 years? What if they were interested in astronomy and geology and everything else? Mm-hmm. And they were isolated enough so they didn't have any enemies coming in like the Egyptians and Indians did, rolling over them every 100 years and murdering millions of people, or plagues or earthquakes. Mm-hmm. So if you had an island in Indonesia, and maybe they got all their tribal things settled the first couple thousand years, and then there were a few million people living there, and they started science. And they did it for 5,000 years, about 500 years. Mm-hmm. Then some catastrophe hits like the Younger Dryas or a meteor or some plague or a huge tsunami or something. Mm-hmm. That's what I had in mind when I was in Peru back in 2012 when I looked at those stones at Sacsayhuaman and everything. Those stones look to me, the weathering and the hugeness of them.
Yes.
Those things must be 10 or 15,000 years old. And based on that, that stimulated another thing. So I sat down at the airport in Lima and started writing a story, which we'll talk about another time.
Yeah, of
Fiction
course.
called
Yeah.
Thought. What's going to be left of our civilization in 15,000 years?
Right.
Not much. Not
Right.
much unless we get off the planet.
Right.
But anyhow,
That's coming up November, people, just so you know. Tune in. I know.
I have a copy of that cover of the book on the back here. Yeah. But anyhow, you imagine these things, and I want to keep it on a human basis. I mean,
Yes. Right.
if we do meet these aliens that they're talking about, or the UFOs, the UAPs right now,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be the most important event in human history since we crawled out of the sea, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Because it all depends on whether they're near to us or if they're a billion years ahead of us. Then, again, talking to squirrels might be too much. I might be talking to bacteria. You know, we might be the bacteria to them.
Yeah.
It's whatever they
Yeah.
whatever they want to do. Whatever they want to do will be done. Period. That's it.
Right.
And of course, my first thing is, I used to say when I used to give UFO talks many years ago, I said, when I meet the aliens, I want to get their franchise for technology for Earth. I want to be the middleman to sell technology to Earth.
Right.
Can you imagine if we meet them and they're humanoid and we can look at them and they'll talk to us? They can get to the moon in 5 minutes.
Wouldn't that be grand?
Well, yeah, SpaceX stock will be. What happens to the stock market? What happens to the stock market when they have a fusion generator the size of your iPhone, and we don't need electricity anymore? We don't need. Imagine you're a South Sea Islander in the 1940s, and you've never seen a person from a civilized world.
Mm-hmm.
A great big ship pulls up in your harbor.
Right.
All of a sudden, every social construct that you have, every belief system you have, everything you have is totally out the window.
Right.
Now I think in our case, depending on how bad it is, the adjustment is, I think the religious people in the world will have no problem with this. I keep hearing all this arrogant things. Well, religions will die off if we meet aliens. No, every religion on earth, every imam and rabbi and preacher and pope and everybody else will make accommodations to it. The people who won't be able to make accommodations to it are the most educated and brilliant scientists that we have right now, because all of a sudden everything that they know is worthless. These people are a million years ahead of us. Dr. Heinlein one time said, there will be a science of the year 3000. To those scientists looking back, the science of the year 2000 will appear to be closer to the year 1000 than to theirs.
Right.
So if you brought Archimedes, most brilliant guy in the past, up to the present, he would appreciate our mechanical things. You start talking to him about electronics and stuff, and he might go into shock, because you'd have to start in the first grade with him. He might learn fast, but you'd have to everything you ever knew about things is changed, and that might be the engineers. We engineers won't have any problem with it because hey, you got alien stuff. Let us have it. Let us play with it. Let's go.
Right.
I doubt if we'd be able to reverse engineer everything, because and that might be one of the problems that they've come across if they have reverse engineered over the years.
Yes, I believe
If
so.
you take one of our big things in the news now, you take one of our F-16 aircraft, which are old to us, and put it back in 1890 and tell them to reverse engineer it.
Right.
They would know what it does, but they wouldn't have any clue about where to begin. And where do you begin to study a semiconductor?
Yeah.
I mean, every time you tried to test it with the equipment they had in 1890, Tesla, they blow it apart. And there would be no way to reverse engineer something that advanced.
Right. Right.
Now, as a UFO guy over the years, I've heard all these stories before about things, and I never believed any of them. I didn't believe that we ever retrieved and reverse engineered anything, because we have no evidence of it. Now, if Lockheed came out with an anti-gravity machine tomorrow, then I'd say, okay, maybe there is something to it. But
Well, it
we've had,
doesn't mean they're going to put it right out there for the world to see. A lot of it is national security, I believe, as well. You don't want the other guy, or the enemy, so to speak, because let's face it, especially during Cold War times, you don't want anybody knowing what you've got. There's
yeah,
that argument as well.
but it would be nice if we had it, to have a
Yes.
fleet. We have a fleet of those that sail around the world and,
Yes.
hey guys, give up. Let's be in peace because you don't have a chance. Look what we got.
Exactly. But you never want to be, you want the poker face. You never want to tip your hand either. I believe anything is possible. I mean, like I say, I've just traveled so much, throughout the world. I've seen pretty amazing things that the ancient people have done. I know that a lot of information has been suppressed. I know we've been conditioned in some ways, as to what the powers that be decide we as a society are either ready to know or should know on a need to know basis, and we don't need to know. There's that whole spectrum of different things. And I don't think they're necessarily ready to rewrite some parts of history. They just want to leave it alone. And academia, they're very, no, this is how it is, because we have a formula. And there's a formula in everything in life, let's face it. I like to try to have an open mind, but I'm also very logical. So that's my logical brain sometimes gets in the way of the open mind, and sometimes it's the other way around.
Yeah, we're all that way. Yeah.
So, you'd like to think, I mean, I know there's something greater. That's for sure. I've had sightings myself. I'm an experiencer. It's like, okay, it's there, but I don't. In the same respect, even with all these amazing experiences, I don't necessarily lean to the fact that we have a space fleet up there.
Oh, no,
You know what I mean? Like,
I know.
yeah,
Yeah.
so,
I saw mine. I was 10 years old in rural Arkansas, and something shot across the sky. It looked like the moon to me. I thought it was the moon for instance, and it was sinusoidal. It wasn't in a straight line like a meteor.
Right.
It was looked like
Right.
this,
right,
and it almost literally scared the out of me, And
right,
I thought
right.
it was the moon first, and then there have been other instances of weird things. And on the paranormal stuff, I've written. If you add up everything together, I probably read over 500 articles and books and everything else together on everything else, and a lot of them have been about paranormal. I'm interested. To me, it's all one thing. There's not
Right.
science and magic and paranormal and everything. It's all one spectrum. Magic and the paranormal are things we don't understand yet. Now, I have to agree with somebody who said once that they used the word queer to mean strange. The universe is not only queerer than we imagine, it's queerer than we can imagine.
Right.
So it might be beyond us, but hey,
Right.
until we get to that point, we're doing pretty good so far.
Right.
I've had these arguments with people before who are devout atheists. I said, I have no problem with you believing whatever you want to, but
Right.
you can't come out and say that that there is no God. You're a total atheist, because
Yeah.
when you say that, you're telling me that you, one little dinky person, this one little dinky planet, one little dinky galaxy in the universe,
Right.
you're aware of every relationship, every being, every creation, every event that's occurred and occurring in this whole universe and all the multiple universes beside
Right.
us. And I don't believe it. I say, you don't know much of anything. And so for yourself, no problem. Do whatever you want. But don't
Yeah.
you can't make a proclamation that that's the way it is, because you look at the pictures that the JWST has taken out there
Mhm.
of a trillion galaxies. And some
Right.
of them are 14 billion light years away.
Right.
If your philosophy and your religion doesn't take all that into account, then
Mhm.
to me, it doesn't count. Somehow, whatever your belief system is, has got to accommodate the fact that the universe is pretty damn big. Like Kurt Vonnegut said, the universe is pretty big, might be the biggest, So it and I have the same kind of disregard for people who make proclamations in their field of interest. I wrote an article for Analog Magazine a few years ago called "Limits of Belief." Now, getting to Egypt and ancient archaeology and everything,
Yes.
I really respect people who do this. I mean, I really want to be an archaeologist. I respect somebody who spent 30 years figuring out all the cases and uses of the hieroglyphic grammar,
That's hard work.
and cuneiform and all that. I'm so happy that people do that. But you can't take that and go off into an area you don't know about. Chris Dunn and I were touring the Egyptian Museum in Cairo.
Oh, spectacular.
He shows me this glass case. It shows all the tools that they've used working. You start off with bird bones and little chisels and stones and things like that, and diorite stones. And like Chris says, now they had continuous 3,000 years of civilization. Their tools never got any better. That's all they were able to do. Give me a break.
Right.
His shop in Indiana, the shop he worked at in England, in 5 years, the guys working in those shops with a hand, they came up with different tools themselves.
Yes.
So in 3,000 years, that's not going to literally.
There's going to be some kind of evolution, is what you're saying.
It's literally not going to cut it.
Right.
Not a pun.
Right.
And so obviously what they're showing us there is not good. So when an archaeologist, unfortunately, a lot of people have never built anything with their hands or designed something or had something built or done things. And I was interviewed for that show, Revelation of the Pyramids.
Right.
I had about 15 seconds on there. During that show, I told the guys what I want to do. I'm begging the professional archaeologist and anthropologist, I guess it matters too, to invite in other people who work with their hands, the engineers, the technicians, the artisans, the sculptors, the pottery makers. Bring those people in, give their opinion, because most of you people have an academic background and you've never built anything.
Right.
You've never built anything. You've never had to put anything into a factory or have other people build it or any of that stuff. I mean, I've had people during different talks say, well, we couldn't build the pyramids today if we had to. Well, let me ask you something. There's a 20-story building downtown. Could you build that?
Yeah.
Do you know how to do that? No, you don't know a damn thing about that.
Right.
So somebody who knew how to do it did it.
Right. Right.
Just because you don't know how to do it doesn't mean that aliens did it.
Well, it's just like saying, you have your carpenters, you have your stonemasons,
Right.
like there are people who specialize in different things and they do just that. That's all they do. Then that's what they know. At the end of the day, we're a really tiny little grain of sand on a really, really big beach. And it's very hard to say definitively anything other than just, speculating. Because I think until we actually die and we can be up there and be all knowing and say, okay, that's how they did it. Right now we're limited by time, by space, by our physical being, by the things that we know or we're allowed to know, or by experience or lack of. It's a pretty fascinating ride, I guess, is the best way to put it. It's a pretty fascinating ride, and all you can do is keep educating yourself. And like yourself, you went out, you saw something that fascinated you, you looked at it, and you decided, I'm going to try to dissect this thing. I want to figure it out. What's it all about? And I think if, more people had that drive or the ability to just take one. I mean, this is pretty grandiose on the big, scale of things. It's a pretty fascinating discovery, but you can apply that to different aspects of your life.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's an engineering education, I guess. Engineering education. I always envied those people I knew in college who were taking liberal arts courses, humanities courses.
Right.
So I took as many as my engineering curriculum book would allow me. Every year they liberalized it, so I took sociology and psychology and world history and world literature and political science and stuff. Things that my engineering friends, most of them didn't want to take. They said, "Oh, that stuff." I said, "Why do you take them?" I said, "Well, first off, to me, it's easy. There's not any intellectual challenge in any of those courses. And believe me, I was able to blow people away in those courses. There's nothing to it. And why? Because in engineering, in engineering problems, there's typically only one answer. There's a right answer. Everything else is wrong. In political science, psychology, sociology, literature, all these things, freshman comp and everything else, your opinion means something. And as you can see right here for the last hour or so, I could BS with just about anybody if you're not talking about sports. and your opinion meant something in political science. My political science teacher was a hard leftist, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was libertarian. I didn't know it. That's what I was. But we argued on every single thing, yet he had to give me an A in a class because I blew away every one of his tests because he was honest about it.
Right.
You know, we disagreed, but he respected the answers. And
right.
It was so nice to be able. I always wondered what it'd be like to take a course, a degree, in a field where your opinion meant something. Because engineering is hard and fast.
Yes.
It meant nothing. Now you got to be creative,
right?
But
it's logical.
And the limits of what's possible. And,
right.
So that's why I was an engineer, not a scientist.
Right. But it paid off because you've discovered this amazing location and you've theorized. I mean, a lot of these type of places, ancient places, a lot of it is theory, but that's half the fun. I think if you had all the answers, then the journey would pretty much come to an end, and that's never any fun. It's great when you can keep going. So how do people find your book? How can they find your book?
It's on Amazon.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully Amazon works in other countries that way too. I guess there are different Amazons. It only comes in the paperback. We were not able to do a Kindle version, unfortunately. The publisher I deal with was not able to do a Kindle version.
Okay.
So it's there. The main thing is I invite everybody to read it, analyze it, and come up with your own stuff and get in contact with me. I can be found on Facebook easily.
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear from anybody who has opinions of it. If anybody buys it on Amazon, I would appreciate a review because Amazon helps you when you get a lot of reviews. But I want to get the word out. I want to get the word out to anybody who wants to look at it, and especially professionals who might have other takes on it and other ways to look at it. And
I will make a point of going to get the Amazon link, and I will post it in the show description. So
Great.
This way here, people can just click on it and go. And I will make sure that all the YouTube channels have it. And this way here, there it is. Nice and easy. So do you have anything coming up? Do you have any other shows coming up that you'd like to promote or any events?
There's an event in October called the Ancient Artifact Preservation Society, AAPS, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Okay.
And a lot of people are going to be presenting talk. I'm scheduled to present a talk on this there myself.
Oh, that's great. So will they be able to get copies of your book from there? Or is it strictly as Amazon? Do you have any that you'll be able to sell and sign?
Yeah, there should be some. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
Yeah. Another thing I'd like to mention, it's not to do with this, but it's to do with our whole subject.
Okay.
New age and everything.
Yeah.
Dr. Catherine Asaro, who's a singer and a ballet person and also a scientist, she sings a song that I wrote called Ancient Ages, and that's on YouTube.
Okay. And what's the YouTube channel?
It's just, I don't know, let's look on YouTube and look at A Sorrow, Ancient Ages.
Okay.
It's a song that I wrote, and she's adapted it and sings it. And it's, if you're interested in Celtic or pagan music, you might be interested in that too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I like to promote it
Absolutely.
because she does a good job of it. And there's the story behind that song that I wrote was another whole another whole program to talk about it. But basically, it was a vision, a revelation that came in the middle of a storm, dark and stormy night. Believe it or not,
Right.
and
Oh,
she does a good job of it. But yeah, the words came to me like automatic writing, and the music did too.
it's beautiful.
So Catherine of Sorrow, Ancient Ages, and I always appreciate any comments about that. In other words, I'm interested in all kind of weird stuff.
No,
I mean,
love it. Where
I
does
knew
it?
I was never going to be the world's greatest scientist or engineer. But as like Charles Fort said, if you look in the dark corners of the room where the light doesn't show, you might find things wiggling around in there, and there might be something interesting. And so I decided as a young kid that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look in the dark corners and try to put some light on them. And this is one of them. The Peru thing, I'm proud of it because, and there might be other places to look.
I think it's a good start. I think it's going to be a journey where you'll be able to keep exploring, and hopefully people listening to all of these shows that you do will be able to help you find some answers. And you never know, maybe they'll find a connection for you somewhere else. Maybe they'll be able to look at it and say, hey, what about this fresh eyes?
Right.
What about this theory? What about this theory? Anything that keeps you forging ahead with it. I
Yeah.
think it's fantastic. Keep the interest alive. Keep it going.
Well, thank you for having me on here about that.
Oh, it is a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. And I will shoot you an email. And of course, you're back on November 27th, I believe it is. Let me just double check. No, what am I saying? It's the 23rd.
Yeah,
And we're going to be talking about the Thaw series, and that's going to be pretty exciting as well.
Yeah, hopefully by that time those books will be out in paperback too.
Oh, wonderful.
Not just Kindle, yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. And I know Amelia just regrets that she couldn't be here, but family emergency. So yes. But thank you again. And I will be in touch, of course. And I will send you all the links to the audio and the video version of the show.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thank you all the people out there who are watching or listening too. Always, that's what we do it for.
All right. Thank you so much, Arlan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Well, everybody, we've come to the end of another fantastic segment. Definitely something we haven't, talked about. This is an exciting discovery, and hopefully somebody out there will be able to add their own twist to the piece of the puzzle. So we didn't get to do our sponsor ID partway into the show, just full into conversation. So extra big thank you to Folgers Coffee for sponsoring tonight's show and every night show. We couldn't do it without you. We're so appreciative. Big thank you to Dr. Snick, Justin Snicker. Big thank you to Steve McGinnis. We appreciate you all so much. Whichever platform you're listening to, please like, subscribe, share, whatever it takes. We appreciate you so very much for doing so. Tomorrow night, super laid back night, we welcome the return of Preston Dennett. Yay! He's just, like family friend and frequent flyer. So he's going to be talking about his latest book, which was just released. And it's we're going to be one of the first to be able to debut it. And it's called Humanoids and High Strangeness. So basically, he's got 20 new original unpublished accounts of people who have had face-to-face contact with a variety of humanoid ETs. So he's going to talk about all kinds of that, different types of races and like angels and nature spirits and just phenomenal stuff. I can't wait. Very excited. So anyway, everybody, thank you. And thank you. You're so sweet, Chris. Thank you. But again, tried to get to everybody. Just had a lot of comments coming in from, all the Facebooks and the other YouTube channels as well. So we see some new faces as well as our regulars. So again, love and appreciate you all. You make the show that much better. So we shall see you all tomorrow night. Good night.